but the cross is part of our path, and we can still carry the cross, and sometimes it can be heavy. It's not being naive, having the saints smiling is not about being naive, thinking, no, the suffering doesn't exist. No, it's about giving meaning to suffering. So we can leave the suffering with meaning that gives us hope, and hope will lead to joy.
I'm going to ask you a bit about faith background, journey, maybe some advice, and definitely talk about all that beautiful art. Like since we last chatted, it looks like your output has increased dramatically. So,
True.
I love who's that directly above your head.
So we have Julia Greeley here,
Yeah.
one of the African American saints to be.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and then it's Paul Tosh Hyung. It's from Laos, one of the blessed saints of Laos. So yeah, I'm bringing more diversity to sacred art as well. So that's different from when we talked. I don't know how many years ago.
Yeah,
Perhaps
I
two.
know.
Think.
Yeah, almost 3 years ago. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And you know what? When we first actually chatted, I was very early in my. Actually, I might have still been in RCIA when we first spoke. Truth be told,
Okay.
so I was still going through that journey. So it was amazing to see your art then, and it's wonderful to see your art now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but before we jump into art, I'd love for listeners and viewers to get to know you a bit. So, who are you and what do you do?
Well, those are very big questions. Okay, so I'm Ruben, and I'm Portuguese. I'm originally from Lisbon. I'm based in London currently, for the last 8, will be 9 years soon.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a sacred art artist. I don't do this yet full time, so I also work for the health service. I work in a hospital managing conflicts and conflict resolution. So I used to say that art it's what keeps me sane, and what keeps me going in the hospital. Also putting those
Yeah,
gifts to the service of others, bringing peace and improving
that's
services and work conditions.
that's
Um,
that's beautiful. That's pretty remarkable to juggle and to see that monumental output that you have.
yeah.
But before we jump further into your art journey, I'd love to chat about your faith journey. Like, where are you in that? Are you a convert, a cradle Catholic, more like myself, a revert? Where would you kind of fall in those sort of buckets?
Well, we have in Portugal what is called the non-practice Catholics, so the non-church goers. So you think you are Catholic by culture, but that doesn't mean anything. It's like saying, "Oh, I play football, but I never do actually kick a ball." So, so that was how I was raised. So I was baptized, and that was it when I was, 1 year old. But that was it, nothing else. So in a way, I found my way to the church through the lives of the saints and through art, especially Mother Teresa. So I remember being a teenager, and and now I'm really feeling old. Back then, we had no TikToks or smartphones or anything. I was just bored and zapping through the television, and a movie was about to start, and was a movie about Mother Teresa. I didn't know who Mother Teresa was, but I thought, well, I have nothing better to do anyway. So I just sat down and watched the film. And I remember that by the end of it, something had changed. So I think that was the first door that God used to knock and say, well, I'm here. And I opened that door. And I remember asking my mother about Mother Teresa. My mom didn't knew much. We weren't even sure if she was still alive or not. So that put me on the path of finding more about Mother Teresa, and then obviously Mother Teresa will lead me to other saints, and then Portugal. It's very rich in the patrimony, it's the religious patrimony. We have beautiful churches, beautiful art. So walking
Marian
around downtown,
apparitions.
yeah, walking around downtown Lisbon, I started having an interest, not just art. I always had an interest in art, but also on what was being represented. And you can see, people being beheaded, pierced with arrows, losing their minds, losing their heads, literally for Christ. And I started wondering, who is this Christ? Who is Jesus? Eventually, when you visit churches, you will find mass. So I thought I start watching mass. I didn't know what a mass was, so I just remember sitting in the back of a church with a bunch of old people. It was a very tiny church, still exists today, and I was spotted by a nun. Nuns are very clever. They are very dangerous spotting talent for God. So I love nuns. They're my heroes. So a nun that is now my godmother, she spotted me and asked me to do a reading, uh, still not knowing much about what being Catholic meant or what the
Mhm.
church was. I started doing the reading, and I took that as a commitment. So every single Sunday, I start going to mass. Eventually, my parents followed, my family start following, just out of curiosity to see me read.
Mhm.
And I remember that at the beginning, I received communion without knowing I did not have the first Holy Communion myself. But this is the way God acts,
Yeah.
God always takes the initiative and can work through our ignorance as well. So He was already making uh, uh, a dwelling in my heart without me knowing. He said, "No,
Yeah.
I'm not letting you go." So eventually we realized that. So I was already 14 or 15 when I did my preparation, my formal preparation for my first Holy Communion, and I
And
became to serve at the altar and all that, and I've been serving the church ever since.
yeah, and so up to that point, your family was culturally Catholic, but as you said, never actually went out to kick the
Yes.
ball, as it were. So that's really interesting. Just on a whim going in, your whole family had a major conversion. So, what was their reaction when they actually first saw you up reading?
I think they were proud in a way. It was an unknown scenario for them as well. But I remember being at home and criticizing the church really, really roughly, because as a teenager you have all that anger, also perhaps coming from a bit being bullied at school, and also it's very easy to turn against the church. Difficult is to understand the goodness in the church, because noise everyone can make, but actually building something. Someone said a tree growing in a forest doesn't make any sound, makes sound when a tree falls. So it means that what is negative always sounds higher than what is already growing. So it's easy to just take that stand against the church. And I remember my dad telling me, "You hold on your horses there, because the world will be a very worse place, much worse place, if there was no church." And I thought, oh, okay. So if my dad is saying this, and if none of us are churchgoers, perhaps he has a point. So, so God was always there. So I think they were just, we just found the way. We just found the way.
Yeah, very very wise words from your father, and that's really interesting for him to hold that position, even though none of the family was going, but
Yeah,
still being outside of it, but still looking at it and being able to see the truth, beauty, and goodness of it.
true.
Yeah, that's really impactful. So in that journey now, you're a teenager, you're altar serving, slowly growing in your faith. Where does that intersection of your faith and art come along? Were you going to art school during this time? How did you cultivate and come about that part of you?
So in secondary school, I was studying art, but that was it. Art was the only thing I was good at school. I always felt that I wasn't good at anything else. Always being compared to others, feeling that I wasn't a capable human being, because the only thing I was good at was art, and art is not necessarily valued by the society. And even my parents, although my dad was a self-taught painter, artist, as I am, he never kind of pushed me to study arts, or not even to teach me the the basics of painting. They were very concerned for me not to follow that path, because they said you have to have a proper profession, a proper job, because art doesn't put food on the table. uh, at some degree they are right, but parents only tend to do the best they can and they know. And I look back in this journey, and I thought, well, if I had gone to uni to study arts, perhaps I would be a different person today. But only God knows. So art was always part of me seeing myself as a human being, if that makes any sense. I always felt that it was a way for me to express, and it turned to be a way to express my own faith as well. So for me, art is never an isolation. It's always in a relationship. So it's very hard for me to paint someone that I cannot relate to, or I cannot have a conversation or a dialogue. So for me, art is praying. Art is talking. Is a dialogue. Is a loving dialogue, and that
Hmm.
was always it since I was a teenager and I started my conversion and getting closer to the saints. The
Hmm.
saints were always the main motives for my paintings, um, and that's it. And that's it.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
why art and faith comes, side by side.
yeah, yeah. I totally get that, and I'll also hear your pups in the background. I know that feeling. I've just convinced mine to lie down on the couch. So yeah, I've seen your amazing art. You have such exquisite art featuring the saints. I'm curious to know who was your first saint, and why did you choose that person?
Uh, that's a very difficult one. Well, I've painted Mother Teresa 3 times, perhaps because I'm so linked with her. But people often ask me as well, who is my favorite saint? Who do I like to paint the most? It really varies, and it's always a difficult answer for me. They all have their role in my life, and they kind of work like stars in heaven. So they will come closer as I need some of their influence or said advice, and so some come and go. But I do love to paint joy, and that's one of the marks of my paintings. Is people come often to my studio and say, "Well, your saints are different than the others because your saints are smiling."
Yes, yes. That was something I was going to bring up. I find that so fascinating. Like I've been to museums and seen the very typical, very stoic, very like oh
Yes.
like staring off into the distance, and there's like I don't want to say a forlornness about them, but there's just a marked difference between your stylistically of having that joy. Like it, what is that? What is that sense that you're infusing in there, and where does that come from? Like,
I, I I'm absolutely sure it comes from my own experiencing of God and my own self. So when people commission a painting or people buy a painting, it's not the same as buying a photograph. They are buying a bit of my soul. They are buying hours and hours of working, um, and contemplation and study and investigation and dialogues and all and prayer. So that's what people are buying actually. It's not just the final result, it's all the process. And as I matured as a Catholic, I realized we can only be saints if we are truly ourselves. We can truly be saints if we are truly ourselves. God doesn't want us to be a copy. So I was always funny. I always liked pranks. I love to talk to public, you name it. And I found myself in a cultural environment, religious cultural environment in Portugal, very similar to the Spanish one and the Italian one, European in general, that the faith is lived more towards the sorrows of God and Our Lady. So, without taking any of the value of the sorrows of our Lord, but when you go around the churches, it talks pretty much about suffering. So you have that painful expressions of Our Lady and painful expressions of Jesus. But I, can't we have something different than that? And there are several sayings in Portuguese that if you are not a serious person, you are not a valid person, so you have to be serious. And I always remember Saint Teresa of Avila. I love Saint Teresa of Avila, and she used to say, "I'm more afraid of a sad nun than the herd full of evil demons." And so where is the joy in our spiritual lives today? Being happy, being joyful, having a laugh with God is not a sin. I think it comes with the fact that he's risen and he has overcome death. I don't want to go to a heaven where Jesus is waiting to me like with the severe face that we see in many paintings and statues in some of. I want him to be waiting for me with open arms and with a big smile, you know. So if not, what's the point of going to heaven, you know? So when we think about our cherished memories from with friends or with family, usually are the ones that brings laughter to it, you know, brings joy, you feel joyful. So why should we cast away God from our joy and the saints, you know? Why shouldn't we be allowed to laugh and smile with them and feel a little bit closer to heaven? You know, if we feel that it's just all about sorrows and feeling miserable, come on, no one follows miserable people. So if you want more vocations, live your own vocation with joy. You know, that's true. If Jesus
Yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah.
miserable guy, no one would have followed him. So even Jesus leads with telling stories that are funny. We just lose the funny aspect of it because we hear it over and over again. But he was
Yeah.
a funny guy, you know, that he was captivating. When we look at leaders and churches and celebrations, sometimes you think, oh my God, we are all in trouble if we are going to this heaven, you know? So yeah, it's
So
just about bringing and sharing that joy of feeling deeply loved by God through the saints and through the paintings and through the laugh and the smile that they can bring to our lives.
yeah, that's really interesting. I love hearing that perspective and infusing the joy, infusing like we are all walking billboards for the faith. So sharing that joy is so very imperative. But I like that you do it in such a way where there's Jesus is at the center, Christ is at the center, and it's all about emulating that joy versus those who follow things like the prosperity gospel and that sort of thing, where it's like, oh, this is what I can get, versus your thing is like, hey, this is the gift that's inside me. This is a love that I have. I love that. I think that's fantastic. And what sort of pushback do you experience? Because people are used to seeing things a specific way, and although it just at the forlorn art, it you just notice that stylistic difference. So I'm curious to know, have you faced like pushback or critique of seeing saints, seeing Christ in this joyful manner?
I may be sounding, I don't want to sound too arrogant because I'm definitely far away from being that. I know that everything I do it with God. And if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be doing any of this. And if I want to do something really, really bad, but if it's not according to His plans, that painting won't work. And sometimes He just inspires me something overnight in a way that I have to wake up and come and do a sketch and the following day the painting will just flow. And so I put my hands up. I wouldn't be nothing if it wasn't for Him. I'm only an artist because He is. And He uses any kind of brushes, even the dodgy ones. So if I can do something great, everyone can. So I don't want to sound arrogant, but if you are not criticized, if you don't face some kind of persecution, I doubt if you are in the right path. Because if that was what happened to Christ, and if we want to be like Christ, it's likely that will happen to us as well. Obviously, I don't expect to die on the cross, but the cross is part of our path, and we can still carry the cross, and sometimes it can be heavy. It's not being naive, having the saints smiling is not about being naive, thinking, no, the suffering doesn't exist. No, it's about giving meaning to suffering. So we can leave the suffering with meaning that gives us hope, and hope will lead to joy, even if you have to suffer obstacles and criticism. And people we live in a world that is very easy for people to be mean, especially in the internet. So people can just be awful. And yes, I've received a bit of criticism, especially people calling me an heretic, and I should be ashamed of myself for portraying apostles, the disciples of Jesus with human expressions. I have a very famous painting of the doubting Thomas, where
I
he's
love
with
that one. I love
yeah.
that one, by the way.
I invite people to go and have a look on my social media. I have done retreats around that painting. I have done numerous talks around the world about that painting. So, criticism is just part of it. And I'm open to constructive criticism. I think being an apostle, being a missionary, is being open to listen to others and to listen to the world. And I've learned from people. And when I was telling you that I cannot do a painting without God, this is the living proof. So when I did the Doubting Thomas with a very surprised face, seeing the risen Lord in front of him, I asked people, wouldn't you do the same expression? This is just bringing our humanity to the saints, because they were humans as us. They are not gods or semi-gods. No, they are humans. So they would do, and they would feel, and they would express themselves similar to the way we would express ourselves. We have to understand cultural context and all that, but in general, they are humans, so they will have the same emotions. And the feedback I start receiving from people, it's much more positive than negative, thank God. And people have taught me a lot for what they see. So I always say that no one possesses art. Art is for everyone, and so is God. So when people see the Doubting Thomas, they start saying to me, "Oh, Ruben, oh, I love the way you have portrayed the risen Jesus." Sorry, how you portrayed the risen Jesus in that painting. And I said, "But I haven't painting the risen Jesus in that painting." And they said, "Yes, you did, because Thomas is looking at us, so he's seeing the risen Jesus in our hearts." And I said, "Wow, that's amazing." And if I thought it was all down to me, I would just say, "This is my idea." But you see, I'm sharing it wasn't my idea. So I don't control what people will see and how God will speak to people through my art. So thank God, the positive feedback I receive is much bigger than the negative, and that's what shows me that I'm in the right path. So yes, I do thank you, everyone that really encourages me and follows me on social media. It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I really admire how you're open to encounter with people discussing art. The fact that you've done retreats and really had dialogue around your art, and that's interesting. I'd never heard that perspective on the Doubting Thomas of being the fruits of that is really. Yeah, that is really interesting. And I'm going to go back and look at it with fresh eyes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So in your journey, I know you said being self-taught and growing in your faith, serving in the church, starting to cultivate that artistic talent that's within you. At what point did you shift over to London, and what brought you there? Was it around an arts move, or I'm curious to know that sort of process and what the fruits were of that.
Well, yes. So, sorry, I do speak a lot, and sometimes when I'm speaking, I just jump from one thing to another. So thank God I have you to guide me. So yes, eventually I went to uni and I studied to become a social worker and a mediator. Okay. Therefore, me managing conflicts now for a hospital, but. I always felt that art was still part of me, and I couldn't express freely, or I didn't felt that I had the space to do so where I was living and with the work conditions I had back then. But one of my best friends, she kind of challenged me eventually to go and be in a studio with another artist from Lisbon. And that was the first step I gave towards thinking that, okay, I can have training in painting. And I was with this artist for 2 years, and I've learned a lot with her. She was the first person. So I was already painting, as I told you, and I thought that what I was doing was great. People approved.
Yeah.
But actually, I was stuck in my comfort zone. You don't want to take risks. If this is the only thing that people approve, you will stick to it.
Yeah.
And this painter, this artist, she looked at my paintings and said, "You know what, Ruben? Those are good, but you can do much better." I thought, oh my God, my world. This is the only thing I'm good at. You can see, and you are saying that I can do much better. So eventually she taught me to paint and hide my paintings below the bed and don't show it to anyone. This led me to take risks. And when we take risks, we start discovering new paths. We starting, having new techniques. We are not as worried. We are not as blocked, and suddenly good things starting to happen. So I remember it was with her and with one of the paintings I did, an old painting of the Saint Michael Archangel. I look at it and say, "Oh my God, this came out of me. This means I can perhaps do this for a living." So that was close for me to make a decision to leave to London and to move to London. So I was with her for 2 years and then I moved to London. And in London, I had different opportunities. So job-wise, I could have more time at home to spend more time painting. And I did my first 3 short master classes for the first time to just perfect technique and to know different styles and eventually to find my own style. So yes, London opened a lot of new doors for me artistically. So that's why I moved here.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I really like that notion of challenging yourself to grow, because as we're all cultivating our faiths and cultivating the gifts and talents that we've been given, it's good to know it's not enough to pour a little water on it and say, oh, I'm good, I'm content. The fact that continually challenging oneself and pushing and growing, that's I really like that. As you can see, I'm like, okay,
Yes,
how can I
yes.
apply that to my life? Let me
But you are absolutely
plug
right.
that.
We are always learning and always growing up to the day that we die. A lot of people come and say, "Oh, Ruben, you have such a beautiful ministry and you have helped me to know more about the unknown saints and all that. I wish I could know what God expects from me." And what I always tell people is, you are alive. So it means that God still has a plan for you because you're not dead yet. So just pay attention. And perhaps God is just asking to be wherever you are, but bringing Him wherever you go, not thinking that, no, my life with God is just when I go to Mass on Sunday. No, no, no. Your life with God is as every single minute of your life. So that's the best evangelization you can do. Take God wherever you go, even if you are in the traffic, if you are shopping, if you are working, and even if your work doesn't feel meaningful, your presence will make that work meaningful, because you perhaps will make a difference to your coworker or to a client or to a stranger. So just bring God, allow God to be or to overflow from your life in all aspects of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when a person really cultivates and grows in their faith, it's really interesting. Even if it's somebody you've never met before and you encounter them in some sort of a dialogue somewhere, even if it's like, we're both dog owners at the dog park and chatting with people,
Yeah.
you can almost, it's really interesting. You can almost tell those who've cultivated faith in some sort of manner. There'll be something that will be said and you'll be like,
Yeah,
wait a second.
I can give you exactly that example. So as we were saying at the beginning, I have 2 dogs and I love them to bits, and I walk them every day. And in the other day in the park, I've met a couple with a dog. And you start speaking about the dog, and suddenly you say, "Oh, things in Portugal are one way," and then the guy said, "Oh, in Canada we do things this way." And the
Oh,
lady
okay.
said, "Oh, in Japan, they do things this way." And I said, "Oh, really? You are from Japan?" You know
Yeah.
what? I'm working with lesser known saints, and
Yeah.
I've been studying saints from Japan. And these are the paintings I did of the Japanese saints. And eventually I turned to the Canadian guy and said, I also know Dina Belanger. So it's one of the unknown saints from Canada. She was a pianist. And suddenly, without even asking if they are Catholics or even Christians, I'm speaking to them about saints that they can relate to. And, Christ shows up out of the bushes, it's just... And that's the power of art as well. I have to give it that, because I can show it to people, and people will have an interest in seeing more and all that. So it's about creating that curiosity in our lives that may lead people to want to know more about God. I always say that faith is not about rigid answers. It's about having the right questions and questioning it all the time. It's how you grow in faith.
Yes.
As I keep growing in faith, I question things more, and it makes me dig more and makes me to want to know more. And that's how you know that your faith is alive. It's not just a routine. It's not just a tick on the box.
Yes, Yeah, if constantly growing, constantly be. I don't not necessarily becoming more, but yeah, just that growth, and like engaging with the sacraments, the sacramentals, and all this is all part of the cultivating of our faith and the seeds of, and talents that we've been gifted.
Yes.
Something I'm curious to get your thoughts on, as sacred artist, and your medium is oil paint,
Yes.
predominantly. Okay.
Yes.
Again, love your art. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on, as you see more like digital art, like people using AI to create art. Um, does it impact your process? Does it, gosh, I guess, is it even something that you even think about? Like, where does that sort of fit in your realm of your practice, and yeah, I guess just how you operate as a Catholic sacred artist.
That's a very interesting question, and I've been approached in other podcasts and other interviews about the same
Oh,
question. And I don't think I would. Yeah, uh, it's an interesting, and I think we should reflect um, on it because it's serious. So, for in one side you have EI. Yeah, I'm saying it right. EI. Yeah, I'm saying it right.
well,
I
AI. I'm not sure what it is in Portuguese, so I do not presume.
yes, I'm saying the Portuguese. Sorry,
No,
AI.
no fala português. That's all I know.
So AI, yeah.
Yeah.
So in one way, it comes to challenge us as human beings. So for me, being an art and being human beings are very much what we are. It's what distinguishes us from other animals. It's the capacity to appreciate, to create art, to understand art, to interpret art, and we have done it since we were in caves. So it's part of who we are, and it's so powerful that in times of war, usually artists are the first ones to be silent. So there is something really connected about being an artist and being a human being.
Absolutely.
Having a system as something artificial doing it, fine, it's just whatever it is, but we should never allow that to withdraw or to take away from us the capacity of doing it ourselves. So what I tend to do is, instead of thinking, oh my god, okay, I'm fired, I'm no longer needed, I don't think that will never happen, because a painting done by an artist has what I already shared with you, has tears, has sweat, has our soul in it, is not something artificial. It has a story. So, for example, the painting I did of Saint Teresa of Lisieux, I did Saint Teresa of Lisieux with a dead Christ in her arms, and this is just to give you an example how powerful a painting can be, comparing to something created by artificial intelligence. And when I did Therese, I was going through a faith crisis. I was doubting the church, I was doubting some of the teachings, I was really angry in my heart. And my spiritual director kept telling me, thank God, Ruben, thank God. I said, well, thank God what? I'm doubting, I'm having doubts. And he said, no, 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 you will grow in faith. And he was right. He made me a better person. So it's about persevering, it's about trusting God, even when you are doubting. Um, and when I was doing Therese was throughout that time. And I did Therese because I've read, and Therese is one of those saints that are super sugar coated, and some people don't really understand her, And for many years, I didn't have anything to do with Therese because I felt that she had nothing to tell to my life. She was just perfect. She was so coated that I thought, no, I'm not like her. I have a bad temper. I'm I moan. I all that. So I curse. So Therese, it's so perfect. She will be appalled by seeing me. So, but no, I eventually found a different Therese, a Therese that had her doubts. She died having deep faith crisis. She was doubting even in the existence of heaven. And she was asking God to allow her to sit at the table of the non-believers to stay by their side. And I think this is something beautiful. So at that stage, I felt, okay, you get me, you get me, you get my anger, you get my doubts. So I will trust you. And I felt that Therese, in a way, gave me her hand and helped me to navigate through doubt and through that crisis. So when I'm painting her with the dead Christ in her arms and looking at us, the viewer, she's telling us death doesn't have the last word. There is something beyond it. So I understand what it is to feel that Christ is dead for you in your life, but I'm here holding your hand, telling you that this is not the last word. This is what makes this painting powerful. It's the story behind it, it's my feeling, it's my emotions in this painting. Artificial intelligence won't have the same story to tell about the painting, so it won't make it as
Yeah.
special.
Uh,
This said,
100%
this
agreed.
said doesn't mean that I don't use artificial intelligence as a tool.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yes.
some of the saints we don't know their faces. Some are black and white. Some, some, and we can use it as a tool to get more inspiration, to get different positions, to get different colors, to give, just use it as a reference. But I would never use artificial intelligence as an absolute thing. And I don't think, that's my opinion. I think that if
Yeah.
people like the images, they should try to kind of help and support artists. It's not easy to be an artist, so that's why I always appreciate people sharing my posts and commenting and liking and all that. They are the ones that make this visible to others. So yeah, people are very quick to share artificial intelligence images, but I invite people to do the same for artists because it's a huge support they give us, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love you mentioned near the tail end about it essentially being a tool. Working in film, working in photography, working just in media production. Some people that I've encountered, it's like, oh, we're all it's all over. AI's taken over, or a lot of different jobs. Oh, AI is taken over. But I do agree with you that it becomes a tool to do things, a tool to help whatever processes that we do and whatever work that we do. So I'm definitely in agreement, and I really felt the power of what you talk about, the story, the feelings behind the actual art of what you're doing. Back to the Doubting Thomas, being able to have talks and that sort of stuff around the Doubting Thomas. We sure, it's great to play with like Midjourney and whatever, and it becomes prompts, ones and zeros, and things being spat out. But I guess the big separator, if let me know if you share this sort of thought and opinion, with art, with sacred art that's created by people, but created by yourself through blood, sweat, tears, crises of faith, growth of faith. It's creating that sense of an encounter.
Yes.
And that feels like what sacred art is really all about, is creating that encounter, creating person to person, person to the divine, and
Yes.
everything sort of in between.
You are absolutely right. And I always make my motto, and even it's on my website, and I always share it on my talks. So you were just a prophet, you just anticipated that. But I say that sacred art should be a place for encounter. And not just a place for encounter, but a place for encounter for everyone. And that led me to grow as an artist. Again, I don't know how machines will do that, but this is all a journey for me. So I remember I started feeling that people were feeling that they could be in dialogue with my paintings. So great, that's encounter. Then we had the Black Lives Matter movement, and that created huge waves across the sectors in society. Even in the hospital where I work, we were speaking about that. People that were less represented, how could we make a difference? And I moved to a different parish in this period of time where we have people from all over the world. I don't know if how is Toronto or is Canada. I don't know if you have visited London, but when you go to the tube station or the subway, you will see people from all over the world. And that's how is the Catholic Church here in London. You go to a church and you see people from South America, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, Eastern Europe. And as I looked around at the beauty of the diversity in the church, I thought to myself, if I wasn't a white person, or if I wasn't a white male even, would I feel represented in sacred art? Would I feel that I belonged in heaven by seeing the churches and seeing museums with religious art? No, I wouldn't. Because if you go around the museums and churches, often what you see is white people having a party with Jesus. But that's not what heaven is all about. It's about a place for everyone. That's what Catholic means. It's being universal. So why aren't we as a church celebrating one of our biggest richness, that is diversity? And it's even written in the Gospels. We are like a body, and we cannot expect that the hands will do the same as the feet and the eyes and all that. So it means that we are a whole body made of all different people from all different backgrounds, from all different kinds of walks in lives, and that's what makes the church beautiful. Why aren't we showing this in our liturgies or our paintings? That was a wake-up call for me. And the final the final drop was when I had one of my friends coming over, or the boyfriend of one of my friends, and he's a Black African, and he was looking at the paintings I have here in my studio, and he was really impressed, and I felt in my stomach like, oh my God, he wouldn't see himself represented in any of these paintings. That for the first time was when it hit me. So I started reading more about unknown saints from throughout the world, saints from Asia, saints from Africa, African American saints. And I felt so inspired by these amazing, awesome lives that no one knows about. And I thought, okay, I'm going to tell their story. I will start painting them. So I was not just doing it for the sake of doing it. I was doing it because I felt that they were valid human beings as everyone else, to be part of this beautiful supper that we all will have in heaven when we go eventually back there. So that's what I want to bring to sacred art today. Lesser known saints from throughout the world, so we can have positive representation, so
Yeah.
everyone can feel that they can sit at the table with Jesus.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway from that movement. There's obviously a lot there, a lot of different fallouts and that sort of thing. But I think one of the great things is like, people creating new works of that sort of thing. So I part of my faith journey, I did my RCIA about 3.5, 4 years ago. And before that, wasn't really church going. Before that, I did like the odd sort of like non-denominational church, or wasn't going at all. But I did go to Catholic high school, and throughout that entirety, when we had anything about saints in religion class, that was one thing I did notice back then, was I only saw, I only saw white saints. And I was your very typical, I guess, as you refer to, being an angry sort of teenager. I was a bit of a pain in my poor religion teachers. But Miss
Good.
Plaswitz, thank you for your patience. God bless you. And it wasn't until I began my faith journey back, when I started the RCA process, that the church I was going to, Our Lady of Seven Sorrows in Kitchener, that I saw my first Black saint. It was Saint Moses the Black, and I was just like, oh, it's just something I had never thought of, because I hadn't been going to church, hadn't really been paying attention to the saints. So, seeing that as my first one, and then starting to see, as you said, some more lesser known saints, it does have an impact. It does have an impact, because the whole idea is we're all called to sainthood, and it is important, I think, for people to find a saint that they spiritually linked to, but it also doesn't hurt to see one that you could physically associate with,
Yes.
one that has your aesthetic, or has your charism, or somebody from your country. This is one of the beautiful things within the church. So I think it's great that you've taken that mantle and really sort of expanding the work that you do, because now as people start looking through saints that they see themselves in.
Hmm.
Now they have like beautiful sacred art that they could actually look at
Thank you.
and order. Don't forget to order
Yeah.
some from Ruben, folks. I'll make sure to
we need
include
we
your
need more
website in the
color.
show notes.
We need more color in the churches, definitely.
Yeah, and what's the church that I go to now? Also, another St. Mary's. That seems to be my consistent thing. It's wonderfully diverse. It's in the west end of the downtown core of Toronto, and you look around. It is truly Catholic, truly universal,
Yes.
all ages, all races, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. I love
We
my
never
church.
know.
Love
We
the
never
fathers.
know.
Yeah.
I'm always open to go and do a talk.
Hey, that's good. That's good
and
to
and
know.
and that's one of the good things, I've been invited to do more and more talks around the world. Well, mainly in the US and Portugal, and I think that's remarkable. I grow up my life, and because we are speaking about representation, so it's not just about white, black, or Asian people. No,
Yeah.
it's about vocations as well. So sometimes I remember
Ah,
at the beginning
yes.
when I start seeing saints, I thought, oh my God, to be a saint, I have to be a priest, or I have to be no, I couldn't be a nun. So I had to be a priest or a religious from some kind. And I remember living my life always in this, duality. I was always divided. Am I doing the right thing? And God kept telling me, yes, I was doing the right thing. But only now I can really feel that this is my vocation, to be an artist and to be an inspirational talker. And people are open to listen. They are open. You know, Sometimes you just need a breath of fresh air. You need to shake the waters around, and people really welcome that. And when I go to Portugal or to the US, I start asking people, "Do you know who this person is or that person is?" I ask at least five saints that they don't know anything about. So why don't you feel more curious about knowing this and this and this and this? Contemporary saints, young saints from all walks in lives, from all parts of the world. That's the role of the saints. Keep pushing us towards sainthood, towards closer to God, closer to Jesus. We may not know how someone with mental health problems, how does holiness looks like with mental health problems. So perhaps the saints can show us that. So how is it to live with disabilities? How is to live in World War II, in the middle of World War? How is it to be saint in that environment? So that's how they teach us. That's what they teach us. How it is to bring Christ into those environments.
Yeah, that's a perspective I hadn't necessarily thought of in terms for the Saints. I'll have to go look back at some other ones with fresh eyes and keep an eye out for new and fresh art that you'll be creating. And I guess as we kind of go on with your art and the pieces that you've been working on, I'm curious to know what's next for you.
Well, you have to ask God that question.
Ah, fair. I
I,
guess the better question is,
I never
since
know.
you have to discern what's next. I guess what's happening now for you. We're having this conversation mid-November, 2023. What's happening now for you?
Well, I've been receiving more and more commissions, and I'm very pleased with that. And I've been working with causes of the saints that they ask me to represent people that are not, I just have two or three photos of them. So that brings me a lot of joy to be able to tell their story through paintings. So I see myself going through that, but also working in my own projects in a long-term project that I've been praying about. It's to build an inclusive supper, a diverse supper, where you have Jesus and then saints from all over the world. So you have people from Asia, you have people from North America, South America, from all over the world. As diverse as a tube station or a tube, yes, a tube station. So people can look at that painting and see themselves. Even bringing refugees and people that are in countries torn by war, making everyone feel that God is in their midst, and keeping an open heart to see what God keeps asking of me. and yes, yeah, keep speaking about the saints, doing the inspirational talks, and asking God to give me more time doing that and less time working in the hospital. But again, every time I think I have the better plan, He comes and proves me wrong. So I stop
Yes.
planning. I just surrender.
It
Whatever He
just
thinks, I will
uh,
go with it.
that is the only way for us. That is the only
Yes.
way for us. And as we near the end, you've given a lot of great wisdom along the way. I know there's so much I will be walking away with, and I thank you for your generosity and time. I'm curious to know what advice you can give to those who are trying to find way how they could live out their faith through their gifts that they have or through their work. What sort of advice can you offer?
One thing I've learned is that we have to be honest with God. Sometimes when we go to our prayers or to mass, we do the standard prayers. We just tick the boxes. And and we are not fully there ourselves.
Mm.
Sometimes we are afraid to expose to God our shadows, our lights, or we just want to be something we are not. But we forget that we are speaking with God, the one that really made us, from the womb of our mothers. He created us with so much love, so He knows exactly what goes inside of our hearts. And when we are honest and open and true to Him, we allow His light to come through to all aspects of our lives. The Holy Spirit will come and bring the fire to all aspects of our lives, even if we are living a life that we feel it's not worthy of God, or if we have a past that torments us, or if we have a life that is just boring and we don't feel any meaning. Invite God to all those spaces, to your past, to your future, to your present. Allow the Holy Spirit to come and enlighten you, because you are a valid human being. You are unique, and you have unique gifts to transform the world. Father Pedro Arup, he was a general father of the Jesuits. He used to say, I will not paraphrase because I may be wrong in a few words, but he used to say, I don't want to go back to heaven thinking that I left earth exactly as I found it. So what can you bring different to this world? What can you bring different to the people around you?
Mm.
Starting with small things, small little things with great love. That would be my advice.
That's fantastic. I love every bit of that. Is there anything that you'd like to share that I haven't asked you?
No, I think we had a very good conversation, and I appreciate being invited. Thank you for considering me. Thank you for giving me a space to speak and share my faith and my art and my passion and the love of God for everyone. So that's what this is all about. But
Yes.
thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, and a double thanks back for making time in our massive time zone difference and
Yes.
our schedules. So I appreciate it. Enjoy rest of the day for me, and enjoy your evening. Get your dogs out for a walk, and
Yes.
well, we'll stay in touch. I'd love to. We'll stay in touch
Same.
and see all the beautiful work that you're doing.
Same. Likewise. So eventually, when I do the supper, the diverse supper, we can have a talk again to say how that went
Yes.
and and the
Yes.
result and the feedback. Let's do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Now I'll
It's
definitely have
promised.
to I'll have to get a commission and I'll buy that print. All right.
Good deal. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jermaine. God
Thanks.
bless you, and God bless everyone listening and following. And thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless. Take
Thank you.
care,
God bless.
Ruben.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.